Hello, my name is Michael. I'm going to be showing you the process for determining employee addresses against the hurricane evacuation zones in New York City. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to download the ArcMap procedure files that I've emailed. It's a zipped file, so you'll have to extract it, and I'll show you how to do that. I downloaded it from my email, and so it's in my downloads folder. Here's what the zipped file looks like. To extract those files, you can just right click and hit extract all. It will ask you where you want those files to go, and you can browse and select where you want it to go. I just put it in my downloads file. You can hit extract. I've already done it. And here's what it looks like unzipped. It has several files there. It has the PowerPoint presentation if you want to do the walkthrough through those slides. And it also has a walkthrough map that I've made, but we're going to do this process from scratch. And here's the flood hazard geodatabase that we're going to be using. It has all the data that you'll need for this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is open ArcMap and start a new map. The opening menu, it shouldn't show anything if you haven't used ArcMap before, but you can go to New Maps, just select a blank map. And if the table of contents and the catalog don't pop up immediately, you can go to this toolbar up here, click the search function, and you can look for either your catalog or your table of contents. But they should pop up immediately. I believe that's the default for ArcMap. So the first thing, once we're in ArcMap, is to connect to a folder. That's here in the catalog, connect a folder. And depending on where you downloaded and extracted your file geodatabase to, which I emailed you, for me it's in this PC. It's under my downloads. Here it is under ArcMap procedure files, which is the unzipped folder. And here's the zipped geodatabase, and here is the unzipped geodatabase. I believe I included both in the ArcMap procedure files folder. So we're just going to select that one. If we select this one, it won't let us connect to it. So we're just going to do the enclosing folder, which is that one. Then we click OK. And then here in the catalog, we can see under folder connections if we expand that menu just by clicking the plus sign. We'll see a couple things here, a couple folders that I've connected to. The one that we're doing in this process is the ArcMap procedure files, the flood hazard geodatabase. We'll just expand that one too. You can see all the layers that I've included. We're not going to be using all of them today, but just to give you an idea of how to do that, is I'll just click the layer and I'll drag it into this blank map canvas, and you can see that this is this New York cities. I also have the counties. You'll probably get a geographic coordinate systems warning, which just means that the layer that you're bringing in has a different geographic coordinate system than your map, but we can kind of disregard this warning. The neighborhood labels might be useful, so we'll add that. The flood hazard area is what is used to determine the New York City hurricane evacuation zones. We can drag that in, but we won't be using it, just to show you what it looks like. There it is filling in. And sometimes if these are really big layers, really dense, then I'll just turn them off so that it's not really slowing down my application. So I just turned it off by clicking the check box here. There's no check, so it's not going to appear on my map. I'll also do hurricane evacuation centers. I'll just close the warning. The NYC3 addresses is a CSV file of all the NYC3 employee addresses. The hurricane evacuation zones, I definitely want that. And the streets clip is an Esri file that shows all the streets and address data in the entire North America. But I've clipped it prior to sending you this file just so that we only have relevant streets. I'm going to turn that one off too because it's also a pretty demanding file. So once you've added all that data, you can see here in the table of contents that I'm in the list by source view, which just means that I can see where these layers came from. It came from the downloads folder, the ArcMap procedure files, the flood hazard geodatabase. This is the list by order, list by drawing order view. I usually work in this view, but in this view you can't see the table, the addresses table, the CSV file, because it's not geolocated on the map yet, and this is showing you all the layers that you can see on the map. So right now I'll just do the list by source view just so we can see all the data that we have here, including this one, the addresses, which is really important. So I'm going to turn off the cities layer. There it is. I'm going to turn off the counties layer also. I don't really need the neighborhood layers right now, or the hurricane evacuation centers. I'm just going to scroll in so you can see a little better what I'm looking at. Move my catalog out of the way. Just so I can get a better understanding of what it is I'm looking at in this hurricane evacuation zone layer, I'm going to change the display colors of it. I right click on the NYC HEZ layer and I'm just going to go to properties. You can also just double click and it'll open the properties. So if it's probably going to open to general tab, and you can just navigate through all these. The one that we're going to go to is symbology, how we're going to symbolize the data in this layer. I'm just going to click categories. Unique values is there. The value field I'm going to choose is hurricane, which is the hurricane evacuation zone. I'm going to uncheck all other values, and then this button here, add all values, is going to show me all the values that are in that table. So here we have the zones 0 through 6 and X. It really should be 1 through 7, but this data from New York Office of Emergency Management, this is how they decided to order it. And you can choose what color represents each zone. You can change it just by double clicking on the color and choosing what you'd like. I believe that the 0 layer is just the waterways around New York City. So I'm probably just going to make it a blue. And then if you click apply, you can see exactly how that's displayed. And these will change almost every time that you open this data in the map. So if you're opening it for the first time, you might have a different set of colors than I do have right here. But I'm going to change these so it's a little more representative of what each zone is. 1 is at the greatest risk of flooding, so I'm going to make that a red. 2 is obviously right after that. I'll make it maybe orange. Need something very pastel since it's 6. And X means that there's very low or no likelihood of flooding, so I'm going to just make that I'll make that gray. And I'll hit apply, and you can see exactly how those zones look when you've given them those colors. And you just click OK, and it'll close that window. So next, I'm going to create an address locator so we can see exactly where these addresses fall on the map. Right now, they're not geolocated to any coordinates, so if I tried to open it, it wouldn't even show up on the map. If you double click it, you can just get the properties again. If you right click it and you open that table, you'll see all the addresses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the ARC toolbox. Again, if that button's not there, you can search for it in the search function. I'm going to go to geocoding tools and expand that menu. Create address locator is the function that we want to use. Double click it. The address locator style. Basically building an address locator right now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click that folder. It might take a minute for this menu to pop up. We're going to select US addresses, dual ranges. You can kind of ignore any warnings for now. The reference data is going to be our streets clip. Give it a minute. Some of these commands take a little while. And then here, your field map is just showing what characteristics from the reference data you're going to be using to locate the addresses. The full street name is going to be called full name, the prefix direction. These should be auto-populated, so you don't really have to worry about filling these in. And then next, in the output address locator, you're basically just going to be using, or you're going to be choosing a place to put this address locator. So I'm going to go to my folder connections. All of this stuff is going to be in the downloads file, like I said earlier. And in my ArcMap procedure files, I'll put it in here. And I've already built one. It's called the walkthrough address locator. I'll just call this one walkthrough address locator 2. Just name it something distinct so you can find it. I'll save that. I'll click OK. Once these are all filled in, yeah, those are all good. It's auto-populated, so you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Kind of messed that up. Doesn't matter. Don't need it. So it's going to take a little while to create that address locator. And when it's done creating, it'll pop up a little prompt here that says your address locator was created. You can close the ARC toolbox. I'm just going to be looking at our map for a little while that address locator is building. So my prompt popped up in the bottom right here. It said that my address locator was created. It took my machine about 3 minutes, I think, depending on yours. Might take longer, might take shorter. And you can double check that it's finished by going to the folder that you saved it to. Here you can see my walkthrough address locator. This is in my downloads folder, and then my ArcMap procedure files, my address locator 2. And it's going to have 3 files there. We don't really need to mess with it there. So now we're going to go ahead and geocode those addresses. The NYC3 address is here, is the table. We can right click it. Just click geocode addresses. And here's our address locator that we built, the walkthrough address locator 2. That's what I named it. I'm going to hit OK. The next prompt is just showing you really the settings for the address locator, how you want the toolbox you built, the address locator, to interpret the NYC3 addresses. So we're going to select multiple fields. It should be automatically selected. The street or intersection. If you open the table, you'll see that the street address is called, the column is called street addresses 1. So I'm going to do that for the street or intersection. For the city, it's going to be city 1. For the state, state underscore province. Zip code, we don't really need the zip code, but I'll put it in anyway. The 3 most important ones are the street address, the city, and the state. and then this is automatic, create static snapshot of table. That's fine, leave that the way it is. The output shapefile, or how it's going to display this, where we want to put it, and the default, I believe, is the ArcMap procedure files and the geocoding result. That's a fine layer, we can use that. And that's all we have to use there. Just click OK and that window will close. And then it'll show you when those addresses are geocoded. So you can see here that it matched 161 of them. 29 of them were unmatched. 0 were tied. Once you click rematch, you can edit any of these. Where are our addresses? So we can see here that we have our unmatched addresses here in this show results bar. I'm just going to go ahead and look at all the addresses, and you can order it sort of however you want. Right now it's, I believe, by the FID. If we wanted to order it by the score, which would be how accurately it geocoded that address, you can go ahead and click the score, and then I'll sort ascending. So I'm going to have all this addresses that got a low score. Those will be first. The status will show you whether it was unmatched or matched, which is U for unmatched, obviously, and M for matched. So if we scroll down, you can see once we start getting those matched results, we'll see the scores start to go up. 87 is good. We got a match there, so that's fine. 92 is great. And 100 is obviously ideal, which means it's fully confident that that is exactly where that address is. And typically it'll get a low score if the person who gave you the address either typed it in wrong or there was a typo. If you notice any typos here, like for example, if this was a 0, maybe we click on 1 Columbus, it might be typed in as ONE instead of 1, the digit. So we could change that here, we could edit it, and then we could just, if it was 1, if it was like this, that would be a reason for a low score and possibly something that wasn't matched. So we would just change it to 1 Columbus Place, and then we would just hit enter, and it would show us 2 possible candidates for where that might be. But for the most part, our addresses are good. And if you want to see our table, it's all, the data from the actual table that we downloaded is all the way at the end. And we can see that here's our suffixes. So we know that's part of the table, the suffix A157. So this is all the table data that we got from the CSV file. And then our street address. Anyway, that's a lot of information. ArcMap adds a ton of data when it geocodes, so that's what all these columns are. So we're going to go ahead and close this. We're going to have to take this unmatched data later and probably enter those addresses manually, either in the New York City Find Your Zone application. But for now, we're just going to deal with the ones that were matched. So once I close that, I can see that the NYC3 addresses have been placed on the map. That was the toolbox function. You can just zoom in and pretty much see where all these are. You can see that some of them are actually in a hurricane evacuation zone. This address here is in zone 5. These two over here, they're not at risk of flooding. So we could go through and click each one. Here's our select features mouse. If I just click that point, and then I opened my geocoding result table, which is up here, and I just scroll down to find which one I selected. Here it is, 3236 45th Street. And I could see which employee that was if I go to the suffix column. That's employee A129. And so if I did this manually, I would say, okay, that employee is in zone X. Okay, so they're not at risk of flooding. And obviously that would take forever. We just went back and forth. So what we're gonna do We're going to clear our selection, which is this button right here, clear selected features, so nothing's selected. Get a better view of where all our employees are. Then we're going to do a select by location. Actually, first we're going to manipulate our hurricane evacuation zone layer a little bit, which is this one right here. We can either double click it or just open the properties. And we're going to manipulate it so that we can see specific zones. So this is the query builder. And we're going to double click hurricane because we want to find a particular hurricane zone and how it affects our employees. So we double click hurricane, we hit the equals button, and we can click get unique values, and here we can see all of our zones. So I want to see zone 1 only. So that's the query. I'll just verify it, and then it's pretty simple, so nothing should be wrong with it. Hurricane equals zone 1. Now I'll click OK. I'll hit OK. So now it's showing me only zone 1. And the goal in doing this is so I can see exactly which employees are in zone 1. I'll do that with the selection by location. In the main menu, just go to selection, select by location. Here's my window. And this is should automatically go to select features from. And the features that I want are the geocoding result, which is my addresses, and the source layer. I want to be the hurricane evacuation zone. Those are the two that I'm interacting with. And the spatial selection method for the target layer. So I want to find out if any of my employees are inside hurricane evacuation zone 1. So I'm going to go ahead and select are within the source layer feature. And I don't need to apply a search distance because I'm just seeing which ones are actually touching that zone. And then I'll hit OK and it'll close my window. And you can see with that turquoise selection that it looks like there's a few of them in zone 1. And if you wanted to see exactly which ones, you would go to the geocoding result, which is those addresses. I would open the attribute table, and there they are. Here's all the turquoise ones are the ones that are within zone 1. So now I'm going to want to make a table of those addresses. And if I right click my geocoding results layer and I go to data and do export data, I'm going to export the selected features, which I just selected all the employees that are within zone 1. This layer source data, yes, and then I'm going to choose where I want to put this table. And it looks like it's going to be in the flood hazard geodatabase. It's going to be called export output, which is fine. You can name it here, export output, but that's a fine name for now. I'll click OK. Oh, it doesn't like that. What if I call it 1? Open up my geodatabase. I'll call it HEZ1 addresses. It doesn't like that name. Maybe you have to be in there. Okay, so I'm in the geodatabase now. Sorry. I've opened up the geodatabase and I'm in there now, and I'll click save. Okay, so it liked that. So when you browse this, it wants you to be actually in the actual location that you're going to save it. So previously I was just in the file, and then I have to actually open the geodatabase to get in there, and then I'll just name it the HEZ1 addresses. Do you want to add the data to the map as layer? Yes. And here it is. It's called HEZ1 addresses. So if I turned off my geocoding result, just down here now, it would just show me these HEZ1 addresses There's my employees that are in zone 1. I can change this symbol if I wanted to look at it. I can make it really large. I can make it size 12. I can make it a triangle, 18, and there they are. But graphic representation is not really the important thing right now. Really, we want that data. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export this table so I can work with it in Microsoft Excel or any kind of spreadsheet application you want to use. I'm going to do that with another toolbox. So you can click Arc Toolbox. It's not in geocoding, it's in Conversion Tools. I'm going to use Excel because I have Excel, and I want to do Table to Excel. Now the input table is our HEZ1 addresses. The output is going to be on my desktop, and I'll just call it the HEZ1 addresses. HEZ1 table. I'll call it HEZ1 table. Save it. Okay. It's working down here, you can see, and there's the prompt, table to Excel. Just close that. And here it is, my HEZ1 table. So here are my addresses. And like I said, the first several columns are going to be data that ArcMap used to geolocate them. And at the very end, you should see the original data from that CSV file, which starts here with the suffix. And then the suffix coordinates and the street address. So I have my table. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process with every zone. So I'm going to do another query on the hurricane evacuation zone layer. Go to my query builder. I'm going to clear this out so that there's no query right now. Hurricane equals get unique values. I'm going to do hurricane zone 2 now. Written fine. So now I have hurricane zone 2. I'm also going to turn off my HEZ1 addresses so I don't have to look at them. And again, where's my geocoding result? Here's my addresses. I want to clear out what's selected. I'm going to do selection by location again. Geocoding result, NYHCZ. These settings should be the same from the last time we did select by location. So we're just going to see which addresses are in zone 2 now. Just double check that this is the NYCHEZ file and this is the geocoding result. Hit OK. Now here's my addresses of employees that are in zone 2. There they are. And again, I'm going to right-click my geocoding result. I'm going to do my data export. The selected features, yes. The features that are within zone 2. It's going to be in the flood hazard geodatabase. I'll call it HEZ2 addresses. And yes, I want it as a layer. There they are. Here's my addresses. There's 7 of them. So 7 employees whose addresses worked are within zone 2. And I'll do the same thing with my Arc Toolbox. I'm going to export that table to Excel. HEZ2 addresses. Desktop. We'll call it HEZ2 address. Table, actually. HEZ2 table. It'll work again. And there's my table. So I'm going to do that for every single zone. And it should, I could automate it with a Python script, but we are not doing that in this walkthrough. So yeah. So I went ahead and did that same select by location and export as a table process for all my zones, including zone X, which is that zone again that's least likely to flood. Most of our employees are in that zone, which is good. And there's one last table that I need to export, and I'm going to go ahead and deselect all my addresses. And that would be the addresses that were not matched. So I'm going to open my attribute table of my geocoding result. And for the status, I'm looking for the ones that have U for unmatched. And if they're not ordered, then you can just do sort by ascending or sort by descending. Actually, I'll do it by score. So all the ones that got 0, I'll have selected. And you just can select it by hitting this box on the left side of the table. And then scroll down, hold Shift, and then select all those. And it's the same process. You're going to right-click on that layer, the geocoding result, export the data. I'll call it unmatched addresses. I had one earlier, so I'm just going to override it. And I want to add it to the layer as a map, or add it to the map as a layer. There it is, my unmatched addresses, and they're not going to show up on the map because the address locator couldn't geolocate them. And this I'm going to export as a table to Excel. There's my unmatched addresses. The location is going to be the desktop. There it is. Prompt comes up that it was successful. And that's pretty much it for ArcMap for now. So I'll go ahead and minimize that. And now I'm going to put all this data together in one spreadsheet. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of data here that ArcMap uses that we don't need. What we do need is the suffix, so we know which employee we're talking about. So that's that one there. And I'll go all the way to country. So I'm going to grab this data. In Excel, it's like a 4-way arrow. It's not this plus sign, the white one, it's the black 4-arrow cursor. I'm going to drag it all the way to the beginning. And I'm just going to replace that data because I don't need it anyway. And these 3 columns are also not necessary, so I'm going to delete those. So I have my suffix, coordinates, my street addresses, apartment, city, country. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make another column for what zone these were. So these are all from zone 1. So I'm just going to call them, for this column, I'm just going to call them 1. And what else am I going to do? That's it for now. So these are identified by the suffix. I have the zone that they are in. These are all in zone 1. This other data I don't necessarily need. So now I'm going to do that for each table that I exported from ArcMap. I'm going to find my suffix. All the way to country. Hold Shift to select it. take it to the beginning, replace that data, don't need that, delete these, and again insert another column, call it zone. These are all zone 2 because it's from my HEZ2 table. And I'll do that for each zone, each table that I exported. So I've done a couple things. I've added the zone column to each spreadsheet for each zone, and then I copied each of those worksheets to one workbook. In this case it was the HEZ1 workbook, the first table I opened, and then I made a master sheet and I copy pasted all this data from each of these tables and I put it here on the master. Everything except for the unmatched addresses. So I have the zone X's and 1 through 6, and now I'm going to do the unmatched addresses. We want to make sure that we're not leaving those out because we need them to be on the same worksheet. So here's our unmatched addresses. I'm going to do the same thing where I grab the suffix through to country by holding shift. I'm going to move that to the beginning like I did all the other tables. I did this for all the other tables. Place that. Don't think I'm going to need these. And I'm going to do a zone column even though I don't know what zone they're in case I want to fill it in later. I'll just use a question mark. I'll do zone 8 since we don't know what zone they're in. I should do question mark, huh? Because we don't know. A little far. Okay. And this is how I copy it to that first workbook. I just right click on this lower tab and I move or copy. I'm going to choose the book HEZ1 table. I'm going to move it to the end. Okay. And so here it is at the end of the HEZ1 table, my unmatched addresses. And I'm going to take all of them, Control C, move them to my master at the bottom, I suppose. So now all of my tables are on one workbook on a master sheet. I'm going to get rid of all this data just to make it look cleaner. So now I'd like to sort them, but I can't do it by this original suffix column because it would just put it in order alphabetically and not numerically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new column here. I'm just going to call it a copy because I'm just going to copy the suffix, every single one. We may have an issue with these blank spaces where we weren't given an address, so I'm going to call these B. So yeah, I'm going to copy these. Control C, literally just going to put it right next door. And then I'm going to select that entire column by clicking the B. I'm going to do find and select up here in the top right. going to replace. I'm going to replace all the A's with nothing, just a blank. I'm going to do replace all. So I had 154 replacements. Now all I have is the number instead of the alpha and the number. Let's see what happened to the B's. The B's are still there. That's fine. And now I'm going to sort this column from increasing smallest to largest. It's going to ask me if I want to expand the selection. I do, because if I don't, then it will just be this column that's reordered, and I want all of this reordered so that the address and the zone are still attached to the appropriate suffix. Sort. And now I have my suffix column entirely ordered. And these B columns, those are just going to be employees that didn't have an address for us. So now I have an ordered spreadsheet of all the employees and their respective zones, 1 through 6 and X, and a few that we don't know, which we'll have to look up. And that's it.